And good morning, America. This is Eden Hill, and this is Common Sense America. I am so glad to be here with you this morning. It is Tuesday. It is October the 18th, 2022. And this morning we will have Young Voices, a news contributor from Young Voices, Amanda Griffith, join us this morning. We will be talking about all things on the table, news of the day. We're going to be talking about what in the world is going on with federal regulations in the state of California. We're also going to be talking about midterm elections. And we are going to be talking a lot more about crypto, what Gavin Newsom is thinking about for the future for 2024 and what is ahead. But I wanted to first send out a shout out to Chester County, Pennsylvania, where I am here visiting my family. I am so glad to be here. I am enjoying a lot of different fall fun ideas. I'm going to be with family for lunch this afternoon. I'm going to be up in Bucks County tomorrow for the Salem Battleground Radio Tour with Chris DeGaulle at 9:90 a.m. Philadelphia and Zeb Gorka and all the greats from Salem Radio. I will be with them tomorrow night. I'm excited about that. Also, I wanted to show you yesterday, I was out and about shopping, doing my fun moms, as you see right behind me. And I got fresh pressed apple cider, and we were able to stop at a couple of the local markets. I have it featured here, Maple Arch Farmers Market. And it is an Amish market, and they make all fresh home goods, baked goods, as well as their apple cider. And you will see tomorrow on the show the winner of the pumpkin contest. I took a couple pictures and posted them on social media. So I'm hoping you will check those out tomorrow. Tomorrow, we will be doing a feature with my Hungarian Mama Mia, who's going to be bringing us her recipes for harvest, apple crisp, and then also Friday, we'll be doing apple pie. And Mom makes it easy. What I love about being in Mom's kitchen, it is family, it is food, it is happiness, it is love, but don't get in the way. Make sure that you are on the sidelines watching as she makes her amazing Thanksgiving meal. Mouth-watering, drooling types of food. And so we're going to be having a glimpse of Mama Mia's great recipes for tomorrow and also Friday for the harvest features that so many of you really are excited to see. I've been seeing on LinkedIn. I've been also seeing on Instagram and here on Facebook. You guys have been so amazing and so exciting about bringing these types of episodes to Common Sense America. So thank you. Also, I want to just send out a thank you to Defenders Live Talk Radio. Thank you for carrying Common Sense America. Also to Eastern North Carolina Now. Thank you for carrying Common Sense America. Thank you for airing all of my episodes. Thank you for your support. And also to all my friends and family, thank you so much for your support. As I have launched this show, we are going on 2 months, and it has been such a success to see all the amazing guests we have brought to the table, the conversations, the powerful conversations about God, family, country. Those are the top 3 items that we talk about here at Common Sense America. So thank you for being such a huge support. Also, as we go into our conversation with Young Voices this morning, we are 20 days until midterms. Yes, I am here in Chester County, Pennsylvania, and I have the privilege to see Oz, Fetterman, all of those campaign commercials last night as we were watching the world news. And, comparing it to Eastern North Carolina, where this show is based out of, wow, I tell you, politics is a dirty game. And, at the end of the day, I wonder if any of these politicians, left or right or independent, really realize who they are running for. Are they running for themselves to have name recognition, or are they running for the American people? And I'll tell you, looking at the Daily Signal this morning, which is a part of the Heritage Foundation. It is a conservative think tank, which I absolutely love reading their news headlines of the day. And, talking about the politicians and talking about who's running and talking about who's running this government. And this morning, they quoted Biden's abuse of power. It reports Congress looks the other way, of course, and a $4.5 billion added to taxpayers, an enormous burden, quotes the Daily Signal. What is that about? So again, I go back to the candidates who were running for Senate, many battleground states. I live in one, North Carolina. We are looking at all of these candidates, and I continue to say on the show, let's educate ourselves. Let's understand the issues. Is it one issue or the other? Is it putting money back in our pockets? I think that is a big deal. Driving up from North Carolina to Pennsylvania over the weekend and looking at the gas prices rise from Virginia to Delaware to Pennsylvania. People cannot afford this. So are we looking at candidates that have an R next to their name, a D next to their name, or are we looking at the real issues at hand? So we're going to be bringing over to the show, as I have continued on my rant for 2 more minutes than Amanda probably expected, Amanda Griffith. She is with Young Voices. She is a contributor to Young Voices. And just a little bit about Amanda as I bring her over. Hello, good morning. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. As I was just about to talk to the audience about you, you are from California. You are a news contributor for Young Voices. You are a PhD student concentrating on political theory and international relations. My goodness, can we just dig in right now on that? That is just absolutely fabulous.
Absolutely, yes, that's correct. I've moved around. So I grew up in the DC area, so you can't take the politics out of the girl. And then I was at U Chicago for my MA, and then Los Angeles now. So I have been in cities all my life. I've been in areas that are very politically diverse all my life. Always been a fish out of water, no matter what circle I'm in. You learn a lot. But yeah, it's amazing to be here and amazing to be talking with you this morning.
Oh, thank you. Well, I was reading your articles in Reason.com, National Review. You have done some phenomenal work. And, I'm looking at the news headlines this morning in conjunction with your most recent article on Gavin Newsom vetoing the California crypto regulations. And as you stated, inviting even worse federal intervention. And, as I sit here from a political standpoint, we are looking at midterms. We're 20 days out. We are looking at what is the presidency going to look like. Do you think Gavin Newsom thinks he is sitting on something hot that he will run in 2024? What are your thoughts on that?
I do, Eden. Gavin Newsom has been gunning for a presidential campaign for a really long time. This is the kind of thing that he's been gearing up for. He's surrounded by people in California who are very politically homogenous. So he's surrounded by people who are going to tell him yes, yes, yes all the time. That's never good. Right now, Governor Newsom seems to be styling himself as sort of a progressive shadow or a progressive foil to Ron DeSantis, particularly with recent policies that he's putting in the hopper. And this crypto veto seems like a way to curry favor, in particular with people in Washington, but this is nothing new for Governor Newsom. It's unfortunately a classic case of a politician doing the right thing, vetoing a very heavy-handed regulation that would kneecap innovation worldwide, really, when you think about the California investor market. Vetoing this, which is a great thing, but doing it for the wrong reasons, doing it to roll out the welcome mat for even more extensive federal regulation. Maybe he hopes to be a part of it.
I lost you there for a second. Let me go into this really quickly. A couple things that I noticed in your article that I have cited at the bottom. The news article is in Reason.com. It is Gavin Newsom vetoed the California crypto regulations and invited even worse federal interventions. A couple things that I've noticed from your article: lip service of Gavin Newsom, outlawing the crypto in California, inviting worse Fed interventions, cutting and blocking residents. And something that stood out to me is it looks as though he is really taking a more authoritarian approach to running the state of California. And, you know, a lot of people on the East Coast, and I live in North Carolina, and the further south you get, the freer you become. And I keep saying that because there's a lot of truth in that. And we in the South do not like the authoritarian state. And what I'm seeing from Newsom is some of the comments, the pieces that you wrote in that editorial are very concerning. If he would run for president, is he going to be, you know, cutting and blocking his constituency, the people that vote him, from having aspects of freedom? I've heard him say and quote, "What is freedom?" And he starts laughing. What are your thoughts on that?
It's very concerning, Eden. I don't know how much of me you lost, but I was saying that in terms of a presidential run, Governor Newsom might even hope to be a part of some of that regulation down the line, that he's rolling out the welcome mat for more federal regulation. It's disturbing to me for a couple of reasons. First of all, when you think about all the innovation that is available in California that can go worldwide, I just focus on the crypto market in this piece. But when you think about all of this and you think about the way that we're not looking to the innovators, we're not looking to the people who are really going to be making the changes in the space, we're looking to federal bureaucrats, in Governor Newsom's case, to set the tone and to set the rules. It's concerning to me as someone who wants to see access, financial access, broadened just overall, and broadened across California. Cryptocurrency has been an incredible boon to new investors, people who are chronically unbanked or underbanked, people who have been traditionally cut off from the financial space. And now these bills that Governor Newsom is vetoing only to roll out the welcome mat for more federal regulation are going to choke consumers even more from that access.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this. As I had mentioned, the Daily Signal put out this morning, the Heritage Foundation think tank, they talked about Biden's abuse of power. Congress looks the other way, and shocker for both of us to hear that, right? Right. But it says 4.5 billion have been added to the taxpayers. And what an enormous burden. And, you know, my thinking is, is this going to turn the tide for Congress to basically end up being red in November? What are your thoughts on that initially? I mean, is that going to open up tremendous doors for all of these campaigns as we're 20 days out? What are your thoughts on that?
People are talking about that. People are talking about a red wave. You know, what I really want to see from any party that's in power is I want them to earn the majority. I don't want them to just win a majority. I want them to earn a majority. And right now we have politicians that are really managing to almost turn away from the opportunities they have from their constituents to learn from them. So will there be a red wave? There might be. And if there is, in that case, I would hope to see what people haven't seen from Democrats over the past couple of years, what Democrats promised and didn't deliver on, which is actually listening to the people, actually listening to people who are going to be, wanting this kind of access to, to change and to opportunity. They've been cut off from that for a very, very long time.
No, I agree with you. I had ran for state house in May for the primary for North Carolina, and talking about people being cut off. I was door knocking, which I think is a Kennedy Reagan generational thing, because it seems as though a lot of people no longer do the door knocking. It's more, let's call the constituents, let's bombard them with 10,000 mailers to get the vote and get the visual. And, I realized I love door knocking. I love working with people. I love being a public servant, whether it's through the show, whether it's through my business, whether it is talking with you, and realizing that at the end of the day, these people, these voters have been neglected. They have been neglected. So many of them had said to me, thank you for coming to our doorstep. We have not seen anybody in years. And looking at what is happening across the political spectrum, looking what is happening across the states, the battleground states. North Carolina is a huge battleground state. I'm here in Chester County, Pennsylvania for the week with my family, and we have the Oz Fetterman race, and it is neck to neck, literally. And people are awakened. They are concerned to see what is happening. They're concerned to see the gas prices. They're concerned to see where are they going to be able to put food on the table. And, looking at your article on Newsom and just the regulations and what is even more regulations, people are regulated out. They are fed up. They are exhausted. What are your thoughts to the contenders as we wake up November 9th? We have the official red wave. What are your thoughts to that? Is it going to be the awakening of our nation, or is it going to be the downfall of more executive orders? I sit here and kind of chuckle. You and I both chuckle, having been in DC all those years. I was there for 20 years. As you said, you came from there. So you and I both know how things get rolled out. What are your thoughts to that?
My thoughts to that are that there are concerns that I have from any side of the spectrum when it comes to that. We've seen a lot of overstep of government power, a lot of overstep of executive orders. Once again, the veto of the bill that Governor Newsom just put through is a great example. You have something that looks like a good thing, that looks like it's pro-innovation. We're going to veto this bill because it's premature. Well, why is it premature? Because it's not regulatory enough. It might be too harsh on federal regulation. But we see this from all angles, and it's concerning that back and forth we have various types of bureaucratic overreach, we have various types of bureaucratic overstep, and in the meantime, a lot of rhetoric that is very, very divisive. I would be concerned, with any wave of power, red wave, blue wave. I feel like this is a tongue twister, just simply because anytime you have a huge concentration of one given party, it becomes that much easier to drown out any other voice.
Right. No, I hear what you're saying. Let me also ask you this. With regards to, I want to talk a little bit about Young Voices. Having been on this show for 2 months now, having this show, I have had many Young Voices come, but if you could share what you are doing with Young Voices, talk about some of the articles that you're going to be having come up. And I have been watching your interviews, and I do want to encourage for my audience to check out Young Voices, but talk to me a little bit about what that looks like, help them understand what is the initiative of Young Voices and how did you get involved? Because my husband and I mentor a lot of teenagers and a lot of college, and that is very important to us for them to get involved in a certain way.
Young Voices, and it's a wonderful question. I love talking about Young Voices. It's a wonderful initiative for 18 to 35-year-olds who are heterodox thinkers. They cast a wide net, really trying to get their start in journalism, in writing, in speaking, in commentary. And what they do, if you think of a cross between a PR agency and a talent agency, what they do is they provide that training, that coaching, that professional development in your writing and speaking and commentary to really get you out there, help you make the career connections that you might want, and also just get the training that's going to improve you. I've been in academia for a really long time. So you learn to write in a particular way, you learn to speak in a particular way, but maybe that's not always the right format for people. And so Young Voices is great at providing that training and that coaching, and also providing those connections. And in the end, allowing you to be able to pitch yourself, you to be able to brand yourself with that support in place. Young Voices is wonderful. I got my start. I'm not even sure how I found them. But looking for an outlet here in California, where, again, like I said, there's a lot of homogeneity here politically, wanting to be able to dialogue with different people, with different ideas. And it's an amazing initiative. I've improved so much. I've met so many wonderful people, gotten to talk to so many great people. So anyone who's interested in Young Voices, definitely check them out. And they have a bunch of side initiatives too. The Dissident Project, where they've got young people going to schools all across the country who have escaped totalitarian and communist and socialist regimes, educating people, young people, on the horrors of socialism. These are young people doing this for high schoolers. It's incredibly profound. Young Voices is involved in that. So this is a wonderful opportunity for anyone to get involved, whether as a contributor, as a donor, anything whatsoever. And no, I was not paid to say that. You asked me that. I had no idea you were going to ask me to say that. So
no, I wanted to. I have so many different guests from Young Voices, and I appreciate each and every one of you. You bring your own talents to the table, your own topics to the table, but I really never dug in deep with any of the guests from Young Contributors or Young Voices to really talk about the commentating, the contributing, and what that looked like. And I'm grateful that you shared that. Our audience ranges from North Carolina to all across the country. I have so many people supporting the show, and our radio network is out of Raleigh, but our podcast goes across all platforms. So I know a lot of young individuals are watching and will tune in later when this is back on. Let me also ask you something as we head into my next segment. We have about a minute and a half left. I wanted to ask you really quickly, what items are you going to be writing about, bringing up? What can we look for from you in the coming weeks, especially with midterms?
Sure. I continue to write about the potential of decentralized finance. I continue to write about monetary and financial policy. Education policy is a huge, huge issue for me. So look for articles on that, and in particular, foreign policy. I'm still looking for answers on foreign policy and international diplomacy. And so there's a lot going on in the international space. America's role abroad is a huge question, especially going into the new year and going into 2024. It's a huge question on the table. So that's going to be something that I'm really going to be focusing on over the next few weeks and months.
Well, on that note, let me just throw in a last question. This morning, it was on Daily Signal again. They had a lot of great articles this morning. The American military is losing ground to China. And when you had talked about the international focus, do you have any thoughts on that? Because I know the recruitment has been lowest since 1940, since before World War II for the United States Army. What are your thoughts on that on the international front as it pertains to our national security?
It's a big concern, and particularly as it pertains to China and the Chinese Communist Party. I've written a lot on them and the threat that they pose to their own people, the threat that they pose worldwide, the threat that they pose to the environment. Recently, I wrote an article published in National Review Online that talks about how the Inflation Reduction Act actually might expand our carbon footprint by outsourcing it to China and the Chinese Communist Party because of the way that we tie people's hands with regulatory tape here. It's very concerning.
Yes.
Militarily, it all plays in.
Yes, no, I saw that article. That was a great article in National Review. In that, as we are looking at 2023, 2024, do you foresee, with everything going on in the war in the Ukraine and the constant Russian moving in, what are your thoughts on that? We have personal friends who went back to the Ukraine to fight. They moved their family to our neighborhood and then went back to fight, and they're in Kiev. And so you see it constantly being bombed in the past couple of days. What are your thoughts on just the movements over there and what's to come in the coming week?
It's tragic and it's unpredictable. You have someone who is rattling his saber constantly, and you don't really know what's a threat, what's a flex, and what do we do in response.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be one of those issues that it is not going to be easy to solve, and it's not going to be something that one movement can really change things, but it's definitely
Mm-hmm.
something to watch out for. I am concerned about about threats with regard to tactical nuclear weapons. I would be
Yes.
more concerned, however, with in the immediate sense, I'd be more concerned with chemical weapons. I would see that as something that potentially might be a test run. I would look to that before I would really anticipate any tactical nuclear weapons. This is coming as someone who has no information inside whatsoever, but studying this,
Yes.
that would be something I'd be concerned about next.
Yes. On that note, Amanda, I would love to have you come back to the show right after the election. I'd love your analysis, your political science analysis. I would love to just engage you in a greater conversation, and just grateful to you and Young Voices and your most recent work in Reason.com and also National Review. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful and blessed day.
Eden, it would be my pleasure, and you do the same.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And for all of you who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. We are up almost at the 9:30 mark. We're going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to bring to you a pre-record I did last week. It is not outdated, though. It is another Young Voices contributor. It is Alexander Salter, and he is an economics professor at the Rawls School of Business, Texas Tech. Let me try and say that again. And it was a phenomenal interview, and I have been holding out on it to bring it. And as we were talking about just the economic crisis, what Biden is doing to this nation, well, Alexander is going to bring something really amazing to the table. So we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. It is 9:27 a.m. It is Tuesday. It is October the 18th, 2022. And just another thank you to Young Voices and your amazing work bringing such great journalism to the table, commentary. Thank you for all of your work. Thank you for the amazing leaders that you are seasoning and mentoring and bringing to the forefront. We are grateful for each and every one of you. Also, I want to just send out another note. Thank you to Beaufort and Eastern North Carolina Now and Defenders Talk Radio. Thank you for carrying this show. Thank you for your support for Common Sense America. And we will be right back. Alexander William Salter. He is with Young Voices. He is a commentator, and also I have had the privilege to just do a little research on Alexander and his work. As you can see, he's an economics professor in the Rawls College of Business at Texas Tech University. And some of the as he's waving to everybody, and I haven't let him give a word in edgewise because I'm so excited. But Alexander, thank you for joining the show. How are you this morning?
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. That was a little guns up for the Texas Tech alumni and fans among your audience.
Oh, well, thank you. I do have friends in Texas, but I had no idea what that stood for. So thank you for the explanation. I was introduced to you through, of course, Young Voices. And the pitch they sent to me was Fed Reserve prepares to raise rates yet again. Econ professor rails against interest rate reductionism. Okay, can you break that down for me? What are we looking towards as we have a little less than a month for midterms? Talk to us about this.
Absolutely. Basically, there's this idea amongst financial journalists, economists, that the Federal Reserve is really conducting super tight monetary policy right now. And as evidence for that, they point to the series of interest rate hikes that the Federal Reserve has recently overseen. Mm-hmm. And I think that that reflects a basic error in economic thinking. We have this idea that tight monetary policy means high interest rates and loose monetary policy means low interest rates. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes it's not. And I think that if you take a more nuanced perspective on what the Fed is doing, although they are definitely being tighter than they were over the last year or so, I don't think that their monetary policy is objectively hyper tight by any definition. I think with inflation being as high as we're seeing, right, 8.6% year over year in consumers' goods, really the interest rate policies we've seen from the central bank are not extraordinary. Tighter than previously doesn't mean tight. And I think that we need to appreciate what monetary policy can and can't do. Otherwise, we're going to misdiagnose what's going on.
Okay, so you say misdiagnose what's going on. So talk to the moms around the kitchen table. Talk to the single dads who are needing to put gas in their gas tank and looking at the gas prices. Talk to the grandparents who are caregivers to their grandkids who they have to put additional food on the table. What does that look like for each and every one of those who's going to vote, cast their vote, early voting, or November 8th election, midterm elections? What does that tell them as they have to tighten their belt on the dollars and cents of what's going on with the Fed, with the interest rates, and all they see is the person at the helm who are making these decisions? So can you break that down for us?
Yes, I can. Every group that you just mentioned, they're seeing massive price increases. That's what's really pinching their budgets. Their wages are not keeping up with inflation. The popular narrative is that the central bank is responding to that by tightening monetary policy to bring inflation back down. Mm-hmm. But first of all, even if you think that interest rates are a good barometer of monetary policy, which they're not, but for the sake of argument, let's say that they are. Mm-hmm. The short-term policy rate is something like 3.25% right now. Inflation is 8.6%. So that means inflation adjusted interest rates are negative. You're getting paid still to borrow money. So let's not exaggerate the degree to which the central bank is actually tightening here. If you look at a more reasonable measure of whether monetary policy is actually tight, what you should look at is the growth rate of the money supply compared to money demand. Now, this idea of money demand is confusing to a lot of people because we don't understand how money demand could be limited. Don't we all want infinite money? Well, yes, we do. But we're specifically referring to liquidity demand in the financial system. Ever since COVID, money demand spiked, but then stayed level. And right now, the money supply, the broader M2 money supply, which includes things like checking accounts and saving accounts and bank instruments, that's still growing at about 1% per year. So the money supply is still growing faster than money demand. It's not outrunning money demand massively, but it's still growing more than that. I think it's reasonable to look at that and say that the Federal Reserve is no longer going loosey-goosey like they were from 2020 to 2022. But I really don't think that you can look at that and say that's hyper-tight monetary policy by any stretch of the imagination. Especially people who are worried about inflation, I think, have a right to actually want more tightening from the Federal Reserve. as they're seeing price increases really hurt them in their wallets. And by the way, as output and employment markets remain reasonably strong.
I want to go back to something, and I was watching some of your interviews with your book, Money and Rule of Law. And that came out, I believe, last year, if I'm correct on
That's
that.
right.
I was watching
2021.
I was watching some of your interviews, and somebody asked you the specific question. Explain what the central bank job is. So, and I should have started off with that because I think a lot of our listeners are familiar with the central bank and also what the Fed is doing. But can you break that down in the top three? What do they do, and how does that explain that into layman's terms to all of us who are watching? I'm here in Eastern North Carolina. We have some hot elections coming up. We have Senate, we have House, we have local, we have state, especially Senate. So what does that look like for Eastern North Carolina with the central bank's job, and then pushing it towards the Fed and what that looks like for Congress and those who are going to be elected? That was a very good interview on some of the interviews I've watched, and that would be a great explanation.
Well, thank you. And yes, I'm happy to talk about that.
Sure.
Congress has instructed the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States, to pursue full employment and stable prices. That's basically how the Fed is supposed to conduct short-run monetary policy, keep markets working as well as they can, while also make sure that the dollar isn't losing too much of its purchasing power. As we've seen with the recent inflationary episode, right? Inflation has reached rates that we haven't seen in 40 years. They really dropped the ball on that. And there's no good excuse for them having dropped the ball on that. You can say that they did that they needed to prevent markets from bottoming out after COVID, all well and good, but they were simply too slow to adjust course when Americans needed them to prevent the purchasing power of their hard-earned wages from deteriorating. So what I'm thinking we're learning from this is that the Fed for too long has been allowed to be a judge in its own cause, so to speak. Congress's guidelines are pretty vague, right? Full employment, how much is that?
Right.
Stable prices. Well, how high or low does inflation have to be to qualify as stable? And really, the Federal Reserve hasn't done a great job because Congress has not provided it sufficiently robust guidance. The Fed ultimately derives its justification from the people's representatives in Congress assembled. The people's representatives can and should tell it what to do. And so I've actually been advocating elected officials to get behind the idea of giving the Federal Reserve a new mandate, one much more tightly focused on inflation or aggregate demand, the variables that the Fed can actually control. Because in the long run, the Fed doesn't have any control over interest rates. Interest rates are set in global capital markets. And even the world's most powerful central bank is only one player in those markets. The Federal Reserve doesn't have any long-term control over unemployment. That's determined by productivity, the supply side of the economy. And the Fed is really tailored to stabilize the demand side of the economy. So we need to focus the Fed on what it can actually do and do well, which is maintain the purchasing power of the dollar and keep what economists call aggregate demand, basically total spending on goods and services, on a stable and predictable path. If monetary policy does that, it's done all we can reasonably ask for. So I want to see our legislators actually tighten the reins here and give the central bank more concrete guidance about what it must do to serve the people. Because without that guidance, the Fed is basically making it up as it goes, and they don't frankly have a very good idea to make these decisions very capably in real time, as we're learning right now from the excessively high inflation rates.
Yeah, that's just scary in that statement and what you said. That's very concerning, especially when the livelihood of many Americans is on the line with what is going on and around us. Talk to me about the new mandates on Congress that you would like to see. What has been the response as you have potentially reached out to those who are running for Congress, running for Senate? What kind of responses have you received? Have you been able to talk to them about that? I ran for State House in May, and I've always worked behind the scenes for congressional candidates. So I know the rigorous schedule, and I know, the talking points and the spin cycle, and, doing what it takes to get that vote. And I heard in some of your other interviews that you had mentioned, you have these candidates saying all the beautiful things to get elected, but then, not pushing through what they actually promised. So what have you felt and seen to push new mandates on the newly elected that are coming in? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I certainly don't want to exaggerate my influence on Capitol Hill. I don't think that I'm really a part of that conversation in terms of concrete policy reform, but I can say that there actually is some indications of an appetite, especially among Republicans, to change what the Federal Reserve is empowered to do. There's actually a bill right now before the House Financial Services Committee, the Price Stability Act of 2022. It's a very simple bill, very short. I think it's only 2 pages. And that says basically that we're striking the full employment component of the Fed's mandate. We're just getting rid of it, focusing the Fed on stable prices alone. That's an improvement because we're backing away from something that the Federal Reserve really can't control well and focusing it comparatively more on one of the few variables, the price level, which is just a fancy way of saying the dollar's purchasing power, one of those few variables that the Fed can actually influence with a regular degree of predictability. That's not tight enough in terms of my personal preferences. It's still too vague, but it's a step in the right direction. It at least shows that there's some indications of interest for reforming monetary policy so we don't have these disastrous price hikes that we've lived through for more than a year now. When you look at wage data, inflation-adjusted wages have been falling for almost 2 years straight. Prices are going up much faster than take-home compensation. So it's understandable that Americans are furious about this. What needs to be done to fix this? We actually need to reform monetary policy, the processes for determining monetary policies so that mistakes like this cannot actually make it out of the monetary policy making process in the first place.
In one of the interviews I had watched, it was talking about political pressures of presidents during, so, you have Trump during COVID and now looking at the current president and what's going on well, I'll tell you exactly where I think, but I want to hear your thoughts in regards to what do you see happening in this final end to this year? And I watch Maria Bartiromo all the time on Fox Business. I used to produce at Fox Business. So I'm very in tune to what they are putting out there. And I agree with a lot of what they are saying. And a lot of Democrats, and you're talking about House Finance Committee, and the GOP appetite for this. But then I go back and say, okay, and a lot of Democrats aren't even supporting what Biden is doing now. So my question to you is the political pressures, what you saw during Trump and what you're seeing now. Can you talk to that with regards to where we are fiscally?
I think inflation, and namely taming inflation, is a winning issue, regardless of partisan affiliation. Now, there may be reason why Democrats cannot spearhead the effort to reform the Federal Reserve and reform monetary policy. But if you get a big enough coalition around that, I think that you would see marginal Democrats who are not, frankly, thrilled with the progressive capture of their own party and are themselves much more moderate, who might just defect and join the ranks of Republicans who are really looking to reform monetary policy as part of a broader program for fiscal and monetary responsibility. Inflation is massively, massively unpopular when it happens.
Yes.
And it doesn't take a political genius to rally around a program to push back against it.
Right.
So I think that you can point to the internal politics of the Democratic Party to say there's probably not going to be any serious initiative, spearheading of an effort from the left side of the political aisle to solve this process. But if a good bill gets to where it needs to be in Congress, I think you might actually see some centrist Democrats sign up with it.
Right, right. In that, let's talk about the housing market, if you don't mind. I wanted to throw that at you as well. Living here in the state of North Carolina, we have been one of the top states to see transplants from the north. So they are coming here and going to Florida. And I think we were second and third last month at Fox Business. Talk to us about what does a housing market look like with interest rates, and can we expect a continued, thriving in the housing market, or is that going to come to a halt until early next year?
Predictions are hard, especially about the future. The famous Yogi Berra quote. The last time we economists tried to predict housing markets, the global financial crisis happened. So frankly, we don't have a great track record when it comes to this. The conventional wisdom is that so long as mortgage rates are going up, you should expect that to have a cooling pressure on housing markets. But it's crucial about why rates are going up. Are interest rates going up because people are more willing to actually take out mortgages and buy houses than before? In that case, high rates could actually be an indication of a hot housing market, not a cool housing market. So we need to know what's going on with housing supply, housing demand. I'm personally not terribly worried about a real estate implosion, like a total collapse in the real estate market. Famous last words. I'm on record now. Better not happen.
Yeah, you are on record.
I am on record now. Better not happen. That being said, I don't think that we have any reason to suspect a total collapse in real estate markets. I think what we're going to continue to see is a lot of sectoral and regional trends. Expect stronger markets in Texas, expect stronger markets in Florida, expect weaker markets in California and New York for all the obvious reasons.
Right, right. Well, as I sit here and as you're talking about that, I look around and every inch is new construction, is new neighborhoods going up. And they haven't stopped. So what would that say to you in regards to, you just said Texas, you just said Florida. So we see it all around the state of North Carolina. I'm sure you're seeing it in Texas and also in Florida. So what are your thoughts to even that aspect with new homes going up in addition to this market?
New builds are a good sign. People usually don't build houses unless they expect that people are going to fill them. So I think that we have a strong expectation that there is going to continue to be this demand for housing in states that have found a workable governance model. Again, states like Texas, states like Florida that have actually seen significant population inflows. Florida is the #1 destination in the United States right now for obvious reasons, but don't count out Texas also. One popular figure from about a year or two ago that I always like to tell my students is that the price of a U-Haul picked up in Los Angeles and dropped off in Dallas was 3 times as high as that same U-Haul going in the opposite direction. Why? Because everyone was leaving leaving California and going to Texas. I think that the internal migration patterns in the United States are really going to tell the story about what kinds of governance models work at the state and local levels. And while I have my issues with the Republican Party, I think right now the people themselves are voting with their feet. They like the red state model better.
Yes. Yes, no, hands down. And with regards to that, as I see families still living in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, I said, you need to leave and come. The further south you come, the freer you become. And, living here in the state of North Carolina, I continue to look to Florida. Yes, Hurricane Ian came through, but Florida, Texas, South Carolina, they are examples of what freedom really is. And you look to those governors, which I call America's governors for sure. On a final, we have just a few minutes left. I want to ask you a couple final questions. Talk to us about Money and Rule of Law, your book that came out last year. Also talk to us. I have a lot of book authors on here, everything from constitutional law attorneys to military veterans. We are all about God, country, family, freedom. Talk to me about your book and what are some tools from your toolkit that we can share with our audience. You are talking to conservatives all around the nation who tune in here. What are some of the things that you would like to share with them as we prepare to go into 2023?
I'm happy to talk about that. So in 2021, I, along with a mentor of mine from graduate school, Professor Peter Bettke, and Professor Daniel Smith, who's at Middle Tennessee State University, a friend and colleague of mine, we wrote a book called Money and the Rule of Law. And the message of that book is pretty straightforward. If the people decide that they want to have a central bank, then they really must bind the central bank's hands with a strict monetary rule. It's not enough to have these vague guidelines of the kind that so far Congress has handed to the Fed. The money creation power is far, far too powerful to exist without tight constraints on its use. The Federal Reserve has a monopoly on the creation of the most narrow measure of the money supply, what we call the monetary base. They can create purchasing power out of thin air. And ever since the 2008 financial crisis, with the change in the monetary policy operating framework, they've relied much more heavily on credit allocation, not just money printing, but actually allocating who gets to actually have access to credit as a means of conducting monetary policy. There are massive social and political risks associated with having that power without limiting it responsibly. So conditional upon us wanting to keep the Federal Reserve as an institution, we need to scrap the current vague dual mandate, full employment and stable prices, and replace it with either something like a strict inflation target, right? The central bank is going to tell you exactly what's happening to the purchasing power of the dollar every year, a nominal income target, specifically what's going to happen to total spending on goods and services every year, something that's going to give the market guidance so that we can make long-term plans. You can't run a race a 5,000 meter race if the definition of a meter is constantly in flux. You won't know how to pace yourself. The dollar is like the meter. We need to have some reasonable expectation about what it's going to be worth so we can coordinate our labor markets in the short run and make efficient capital allocation for long-run growth. Right now, we're getting the worst of both worlds. We have this largely unaccountable technocracy, almost completely insulated from the will of the people, and it's not even doing its job well. You might be able to justify the expertise if they are doing a bang-up job. They're not. They're doing the opposite of a bang-up job. In terms of democratic justifiability, rules work better. In terms of macroeconomic effectiveness, rules work better. So there's really no good reason not to actually take this moment and make sure that what we've experienced the past 2 years never happens again. It happened in the 70s and the 80s, and it didn't have to. It happened now, and it didn't have to. We're either going to learn the lessons of history, or we're just going to keep on repeating these mistakes.
Well,
I just wish the way that we get away from it is to actually find that rule and institutionalize it through Congress.
Well, it would be great if a lot of people would take their head out of the sand. I mean, that's the bottom line for me when I sit here and look at it. One of the main reasons why I jumped in and why I also decided to do this is because we need to expose the truth. We need to educate, communicate, connect. And when I was on the campaign trail, so many people, I don't care if it was COVID or not, they were like, we have not seen anybody talk to us in this campaign season as I was door knocking. And that states a lot of what people are now going through. And I still door knock for other candidates. And again, they are saying very, very similar commentary. So I am grateful. Alexander William Salter, you have got to come back sometime. I want to hear more. I would love to have you back right before election. We could break it down even more, talk about some of the choices that were made for the Senate. You are a Young Voices commentator, and I guess I can say go Texas Tech.
Go Texas Tech. Guns up.
I know, seriously, for all of those of my friends in Texas are probably going to call me later. But anyway, I am so thankful to have you. Author, Money and the Rule of Law. Make sure you pick it up. Thank you for joining us here at Common Sense America. Many blessings to you, and we look forward to having you back soon.
Thanks. It was a pleasure.
And thank you for all who are tuning in to Common Sense America. I am Eden Hill, and we just have about 7 minutes left until the hour. It is just about 9:52 a.m. Eastern Time here in Common Sense America. And yes, I am here in Chester County, Pennsylvania, surrounded by beautiful country and surrounded by family and friends, and looking forward to putting on the apron with my Hungarian Mamma Mia. We are about to hit the kitchen and do some pre-records for tomorrow's show as we bring harvest, family, and home to Common Sense America. I'm grateful for each and every one of you for tuning in. Also, I wanted to let you know, last week, we had the real Anthony Fauci movie director on, Jeff Hayes Films. He joined the show last week. And I will tell you, thank you to all of you who have tuned in to that episode. We have had amazing numbers of people tuning in and watching that episode of the real Anthony Fauci movie director and producer Jeff Hayes. Well, today is the day, Tuesday, October the 18th at midnight. At midnight today, it went live. It is live. The real Anthony Fauci movie.com. It is live. So if you have not signed up to watch it, it is free. And you have the opportunity for the next 9.5 days to watch the real Anthony Fauci, Hearing the Truth. It is basically from Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s book, The Real Anthony Fauci. It is a thick read, but it is filled with a lot of information of what happened during the COVID pandemic and also the back history of Anthony Fauci during the Trump administration and leading into the Trump administration. Something you do not want to miss. So I just wanted to repeat, check out the movie, go to the website, The Real Anthony Fauci Movie. It is free, and I would recommend you go check it out with your family. The real Anthony Fauci movie.com. It is produced by Jeff Hayes Films. And like I said, it is one of the biggest audiences that we have had on this show when we had Jeff Hayes on the show, it is one of the biggest audiences we've had to date, along with our military veteran segments. So thank you for all of you who have been supporting the show. And thank you for making it known what you are interested in. Yes, we do news of the day. We do politics. We talk about what's happening at the highest levels of government, but we also talk about what is affecting our homes, our kitchen tables, our kitchen table conversations, the education of our children, what is happening to big media, big pharma, big tech, how it is taking over in many states, what is happening to our military, our national security, and is China the superpower? Yes, we talk about all of those issues because they are at the very forefront of what is affecting our pockets, what is affecting the elections, what is affecting election integrity, everything in between. So I am grateful for all of you who are subscribing on YouTube, who have subscribed on Rumble, who are watching after shows and all of the information. Get out there and just check out all the different segments. Every Friday, we do military and veteran segments. We are looking to do one segment that will focus on our military and or our veterans. And like I mentioned to you, I was at the Navy event, the birthday ball for the Navy on Saturday in Falls Church. And I was surrounded by 2 POWs from Vietnam and also the Blue Angels Foundation. And so we will be bringing them to the show for you to hear their stories. And also we will be doing a couple more Harvest family and home cooking segments with my Mama Mia, which I know a lot of you who know her are so looking forward to seeing her on camera. We got special aprons for this, people. So make sure you tune in, or if you miss the show, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Time weekdays. If you miss it, you can check us out. Like I said, subscribe to Common Sense America on Rumble, subscribe on YouTube, Common Sense America, or go to my website, EdenGordonMedia.com. You will see all the shows there as well. On that note, make sure that you educate yourself. We are 20 days out until the election. If you are already involved, thank you. If you are already a public servant and you are getting and educating the constituents on the issues for whether it's the battleground of Pennsylvania, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, or if it's North Carolina, make sure that you are engaging in the political process, not from the standpoint of what we see happening in Washington, but from the standpoint of think about the kids in the next generation and what they're going to be facing, what their taxes could look like. So think about that, especially as we had Dr. Linda Lee Tarver on yesterday talking about 60% reading level is awful in the state of Michigan. 60% can't read. And they continue to pass them through. So these are the issues. These are the things that need to be talked about. As Congress passes, turns their head the other way to a huge increase in taxes and a huge lack of education in our school systems, instead filling it with wokeisms and pornography and infiltration of cats and dogs and litter boxes. Let's not do that, people. We have so much. We are better than that. We are not pathetic and vile. We are better than that. And you know it. So on that note, I got to go put my apron on and I got to learn how to bake. I know my husband, hat tip to my husband, will absolutely love that. So God bless you all. Put on the full armor of God. Get to work. Have a great day and we'll see you tomorrow.